think Sam must have had to go deal with something. He's over by 20 minutes. So maybe he was hoping to say something when I interjected. I don't know. But that's the kind of thing I'm looking at, these response videos. What do you think of that, Barry?
What I was going to say, because I was thinking about it, today there were 8 of us. And of the 8 of us who were here today, 4 of us were here yesterday for Gertrude's session. And a lot of things were said by a lot of different people, but at the end of yesterday's session, I summed up my impression of what had transpired. And what I observed and what knocked my socks off, and those are the words I used, the person who said the fewest words with the most impact was Tara Scott. She said very few words, but the words that she said were astonishingly on target, insightful. And that just blew my mind. And I said that at the end yesterday.
It was interesting because the impression I had while Tyra was speaking was that she was really trying to hone in on the aspects that she was hearing and was resonating with her, and that's that human feedback, right? She was almost speaking as if she was a psychic.
Exactly. And she was into,
and she could have been right, she could have been wrong, but
she was on target. Unbelievably.
I think it was more of her delivery. Well, not as much. I think it was half and half. She really had a good delivery.
Excellent.
I think.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely. She's a role model for me. And there aren't very many role models. So,
you know what that's called? And you know what? The other place where I've seen that is like when they're cold reading. You must have heard of cold reading, where they're trying to pretend they have like psychic abilities and they're reading the audience.
Yeah. And
they can change depending on reading the audience, right? But if you're not doing it to try to fool somebody, that's a really empathetic superpower, right? Like that's the difference between straw manning, fooling, and steel manning. Like really trying to understand, right? And she had the empathy feedback loop, which was very strong for her. So I find there's certain people in the group that have more empathy, and on the journey map that I see, they have superpowers that would be in places where I wouldn't be so effective, right? On the journey map, one of the things I have, after the strange attractor, which is what brings you to the quest, the strange attractor, it's even a mathematical thing. If you want to look deep into it, which I didn't know at the time, mathematical strange attractors, it's quite a thing. I think I got that from Kelvin's group, actually. And then what Josh said to me that Sam had said to him early on when I joined the group was, you know, are you in a good place mentally? Are you in a healthy place physically? So that you can actually make commitments. So they actually, you know, it's like that wishing well of spiritual needs, and you know, that's kind of what David was talking about a lot today. And I have that well at the very beginning when you start, and you can always loop back and take a break from the iterations of learning. But the outer loop goes back through. When you take a break, it goes back through this wishing well again. And then when you start the game, you have to look at the costs and see what you're committing to. If you go into a university, you're just joining a group. Like, you know, what are you going to go through, and how do you move on after you have learned and got ready, feel like you're ready? How do you move on to higher connections, like working on a project with somebody or whatever? So that's kind of like the impression I have from being in this group, like what I could see could happen as like a flow charty kind of a templated way. And that was kind of the thing I was talking to you about as well. How could we add the sociological aspects to that journey so that you can see what David was saying today? Like if there's a trigger, you might have little mini wishing wells all over the place that assess whether you should go back to the beginning, to the main wishing well. You know, you have to, because that's the big thing Doug gets into. Doug's a big host with the appreciators as well, is that when the person is going through a trigger, the first rule is to deal with that person's trigger and be there for them, like Tara was doing for that guy. So very appreciating the person is what it is. So you appreciate the person before you throw them into the job, right? So, you know, I think that's important. But I won't talk about the things in these groups that I'm going to try to speak less about the things that make me
happy,
want to split hairs. You know, things that makes me want to ask questions.
Somebody asked me, oh, no, it was Wednesday. Somebody asked me yesterday if I had ever asked you the question, does the argument debate model make you happy? Do you enjoy it?
If you ask me that?
Now, this person was suggesting that I ask you the question. Because you
okay, yeah.
the argument debate model a lot, the question is, does that make you happy to do that? Does that give you pleasure?
Are you talking about me again?
I'm reporting to you what a correspondent suggested to me. To ask you, Colin, the question. Does engaging in the argument debate conversational model entertain you, make you happy?
Well, I would think that would be a flaw, because no, it would. So if I am doing that, then that's a presentation flaw and a premise flaw and an unpacking context flaw. So trying to be understood flaw, right? So when it comes to people making claims, and this is something I thought about talking to you, so I'm glad I remembered to say it to you now, is that this privacy public thing, different people have different approaches to it. So when I go on the offensive to challenge, which could be considered debate.
You challenge somebody.
It's usually challenge somebody, and I mean challenge them in the way that I don't understand what you said, or could you please help me understand that, or I don't think that what you said is right from what I know. Could you please line up what you know with what I know, and we'll check what aligns and what misaligns. You know, it's just trying to understand, right? Some things are difficult.
Would I respond to you by saying, yes, let's do that in private, just you and me, or yes, let's do that in public? Which would I say?
Well, they're different experiences. So I think both of those things are alive, and private means private, and it can be made public. For example, when that conversation with Donald Trump and his second perfect phone call, guy was going to keep that private until he said something that made him have to make it public. So, and if everybody made everything public, we would just be living in a world of black everywhere. All the print would take all the sky and all the trees and all the everything. So, you know, we don't have time to look at everything. So how do we focus on what's important? And that's part of the action. So it's not that you can't make everything public. It's what you want to spend your time on making public.
Yeah,
what's ready to go
public.
What
do I want to spend my time doing?
Right. So that's a good question. So this hobby course we have here at the GCC
actually can articulate an accurate answer to that question. What do I, Barry Kort, want to spend my time doing?
I can't articulate what you want to do.
Then
I know I got
suggest that you go back.
I got some inklings. Do you want to?
Let me.
I know what you've said.
Can you say what I said?
Yeah, you said certain things to Doug, for instance, and you said similar things to me.
No, what I said to
about
you. Can you recall what I said to you?
In the recent chat we had about fighting for the truth and science.
There's only 1 p.m. between you and me. There's exactly 1 p.m. that you and I had over a period, I think, starting in October. I think in maybe 3 or 4 sessions.
Yeah, it's not very long.
It's a very, very long PM. It's got a lot of content in it. Question is, did you learn what I prefer? I haven't gone back and looked.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You prefer the Socratic method when you're going through an understanding phase. Yeah.
With respect to.
But there's different. See, the thing is, there's different models.
With respect to doing it in private or public.
Oh. I think you just stated that you can make anything public you want. That's basically what I got. That's the impression I got.
Why?
That, you know, don't consider this private because I can make it public.
Why?
Which I guess you can, because anybody can say anything they want, right? Like, what am I going to do? Sue you? What are you worth, right? Like, what crime did you commit? Like, so, you know, it comes down to trust. That's the big thing. And what does it mean? For trust means you got to have an agreement on what's better. So maybe we don't agree exactly on everything that's better, but where do we find the commonality so I can adjust to the fact that you have no filter? And so when I say things that I don't want everybody out in the world to know, that might be vulnerable, that might be a story I tell you to tell you kind of a little bit of a backstory for context so that we can move ahead to something else that I do want to share public. But you just share the whole gamut. Well, let me tell you the backstory. Well, he was really embarrassed about this. I probably shouldn't tell you, but I'm going to tell you anyway. It's like, you know.
Is that your working hypothesis?
No, I'm saying that's one of a million examples of why you would want to keep something private, because you would break somebody's trust. I would say that when people share vulnerable things with you and expect that it's private, they don't want to see you on the Sunday show explaining it to everybody.
I'm not going to explain it to them. I'm not going to explain a damn thing. I'm simply going to reveal.
I've seen it, but I don't know what your theory of mind is. So
you're interrupting me. All I have is the raw evidence.
I'm just saying I don't know what your theory is.
Excuse me?
I say I don't know what your theory of mind is compared to what I think. So
my theory of mind is the null model. I look at you, Colin, and I've attended to your conversations on Zoom and elsewhere, and here is my mental model of you, the null model.
Yeah, well, you're allowing possibilities.
I have no evidence upon which I can construct a reliable model. So the only model I can possess is the null model. That's the null model makes no mistakes. It makes no predictions. It makes no predictions, and it is based on no evidence. And that's the only model that I can articulate of you. Barry Kort's model of Colin Kilburn is the null model.
Well, you probably have the null model of a lot of people.
I do, because I cannot possibly get enough evidence to construct an accurate model of a human being who's got a brain inside their skull with 80 billion neurons and trillions of synapses and an astronomical number of possible cognitive emotive states. And for me to say, identified the cognitive emotive state and the backstory and all that stuff of that person, I have no basis for claiming that I can do that. I say I have no idea how to do that. Now, maybe Terry Scott can figure out an item. Maybe Terry Scott can figure out one item from one conversation, but that knocks my socks off. And I said that. I have no idea how she does it.
I see. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess the thing that came out was the word purpose, right?
She said that the key.
And I don't find that as a purpose.
Now, the question, now you can ask the same question. What is Colin Kilburn's key value? What's the top of his value?
Gertrude just said that at the beginning. Well, you got to remember, Gertrude came back at the end and said, well, you two were saying basically what I said, that it's looking for purpose that makes meaning. And so she picked up on that very well. I agree.
She did. Of a purpose-driven life.
But here's the thing, Barry. Here's the thing I'd like to express upon that. It really wasn't able to be accepted until it was validated.
He said, yes, you have found the one word in the dictionary that characterizes my top value. She found one word in a dictionary of 20,000 words that was his number one value, his life value. That astonished me.
Okay, so
he did it in the space of an hour.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to spend too much time on that, because I would like to segue back to what we were talking about, that you have a null hypothesis, and very much like
I have a null model.
I have null model. Okay. Well, let me see if I can put a kernel in there for you. Let me see if I can put one in there for you, like Tara did. Now, I don't know. In much what I said today, I wouldn't be able to, by watching what Sam said on a tape and Doug's reply to it, I have some fuzzy data, right? Like, I don't know how much you would validate what they said literally, that I could see that they said, but what were they thinking and what did they mean by that word? And is there, right? So that's why I'm saying I would like to allow the person to get that full thought out without being interrupted.
Yes.
And it's some of these thoughts are very common. You see them repeated many times. So I think the only value I can add, and here's the thing where your mind's blown, okay, right? Is where if I juxtapose those two people having that discussion again and said, okay, let's freeze frame that. Like, is this important? Do you guys agree to discuss this? And how can I do to facilitate what it was you're actually trying to say? Because me and Barry both got a null theory of mind out of this. We really don't know what you're trying to say. And why are we doing this if we can't? I even asked Doug, I said, why do we even record these things? Because Doug doesn't even want to go back and look at the past. And he said, well, that's a good question. Why do we record these things? Where I agree more with Sam that if you're ready and you're discussing something, like I think this is pretty juicy what we're talking about right now, why not record it? You know, I've thought about this.
Record it up
I've
here,
experienced
but
it.
this is not a very good recorder. This is a terrible recorder.
It's a memory. Yeah, it's a breadcrumb trail for sure. But how do we solidify that? And you know, I could juxtapose Sam and Doug saying blah blah blah, and then Sam saying down below blah 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 blah, and make it like a 2-minute thing. There's one Heiner.
In fact,
you even have a good one.
Then you have a Rashomon dialogue.
We all have had.
You know
That's right.
So you've got one person who is present at an event and reports their observation of the event. And then there's the other person who's also present at the event and reports their observation of the event. And in Rashomon, I think there are 4, if I'm not sure, 4 characters who were participants in the same event, and they report 4 different perspectives or perceptions of the event. And the whole point of Rashomon is to reveal this phenomenon that every witness has a different story to tell, and they don't necessarily agree. They can be quite conflicting.
But you can be at a point where you have more information to decide whether coexistence is working or not.
But you can see that they haven't arrived at a common understanding or anything close to the ground truth, because they
get closer. They get closer as they try. And how do you, if it's important, it takes a lot of work, right? Like, of all the people in the group, who am I going to spend my 16 hours producing in the next week if I wanted to do that? Or maybe I'll just put a sloppy hour and a half into it and send it off to Sam. Like, you know, am I going to put any music tracks behind it?
I will make a prediction. I'll make a prediction
I know.
that it probably won't be me.
But I'm giving you my theory of mind. I'm giving you what's going on in my mind as I'm thinking about, you know, how much am I going to regret not doing this?
A mental model of your mind. That gives me a lot of raw data. That gives me that gives me tons and tons of warm data, which I cannot possibly process down to a reliable mental model of your frame of mind.
Okay.
That is beyond beyond my cognitive ability to do. I cannot take hundreds of hours of you talking and construct an accurate mental model of your frame of mind that is beyond my scope, beyond my wheelhouse.
So in the game of discernment, let's say mental model is the word between you and me, I can come around to your definition, which is a lot stricter than the colloquial term I was using as a mental model. So can we find another intermediate term that I could use that you would agree to, that I'm not violating your strict meaning of mental model, which I do agree with?
You've seen it. I put up a character model for a storybook character, you know, fears, emotions, backstory, issues, beliefs, desires, intentions, and actions. And for any storybook character, you can say, okay, I watched this story and I saw this character, and let me fill in the blanks as best I can as I understand this character from this story.
Right.
And you can kind of, if you're really good at reading literature and storycraft, there are people who can fill in the slots of a storybook character pretty reliably. Now, imagine you want to do that for an actual human being, not a storybook character, but an actual human being. A psychologist or psychoanalyst might spend weeks, months, maybe years with one client before they can fill in those blanks. Why? Because the backstory is usually where the key ideas are, and the person has to disclose their backstory. What happened to them in their childhood? What happened in their relationships? And until they disclose the backstory, nobody's going to guess it.
I like that. I really like that, because what I see there it is, you're into private land now.
What
Okay,
land?
when you go into it and start talking about your vulnerability, privacy land. Like, you don't expect that doctor to go posting a private PM on that conversation.
Because
Okay.
they have a
So
different relationship than those of us in the social networks.
Right. So the only way that we can have a privacy relationship is through trust. And you say, well, I see no reason to make that agreement with
I'm
anybody
not a
because
psychoanalyst, and I'm not
right.
not about to construct a psychoanalytical model of somebody and
I'm with-
publish it because
I'm
I don't.
with you.
I'm not competent to do that.
No, I'm totally with you. And so
Anybody else on the social networks is either, to tell you the truth. I mean, anybody
right,
who
and that's
will
why
take a psychoanalytic model of me and publish it is so far off the mark. It's ridiculous, but it's also damned annoying because it
like
amounts
your
to character assassination.
your parodies are annoying. I haven't read any of them, by the way, just to annoy you.
But they're just parodies. They don't pretend to be you or anybody else. They're just a cartoon that I created based on a small amount of data. But you don't take them seriously. You're supposed to laugh at them. You say, well, that is really a silly caricature. That is a silly parody. Ha, ha, ha. But it's not a psychoanalytical model. It doesn't purport to be one.
So I guess the two things I wanted to try to pull out of there, let's hope that I can, is that I agree with you that we don't want to be responsible to hold secrets for people or private conversations. We make it known.
I can't remember where I learned anything. If I learned something in a PM, 4 weeks later, I have no idea where I learned that.
Yeah, I know. You've made it quite clear. You have a little filter and a high bar of understanding, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just a different thing, right? You know, I see some similarities with myself. But anyway, the thing is that if we can, I'll give you my idea of mind, okay? My idea of mind is like a big mixing board, okay, where you have all the different personality traits, whatever you want to call them. There's hundreds of them.
You have a jigsaw puzzle, you put the pieces on the table and you're done. You lay all the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle out on the table, maybe don't even turn them over, and then you say, okay, there's all the data. I'm done.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So what you do is you talk to somebody and you say, you know, I think you're showing signs of maybe you're gay, Barry. I don't know. But, you know, and then you say, is that true? And you say, well, yes, I am gay. How did you know? And then I can take that slider and put it up there. Now, whether you want me to share that with other people or not, you know, I don't know. Maybe you're in the closet. But that's just one of the sliders. There's hundreds of them. It's not
an astronomical number of things that you could hypothesize, and all but one of them are incorrect. And the probability of getting the right one, like Tara did yesterday, is just knocks my socks off, because that almost never happens. And she only did it for his number one value.
Yeah, no, that's fine. There's a values map we have that maybe you'd be interested in following up with. Ask me about the values map later. So it's about GCC members value map. So the idea of having this mixer board, yes, is the idea that it gets validated. If I just put all the slots where I think you are, oh, he's mean, he's this, he's that, blah, blah, blah. He's got a bad temperament, and he's very educated, and he's probably, you know, his education's way up at a 9, you know, goes to they all go to 11, right? So, because that's people, right? Yeah, exactly. But if you get the person to come and tell you, you know, yeah, I do feel that way, then at that point, it's like on Twitter, it's validated. And some of those things you do want to share with the larger community so they can adapt to your uniqueness if they be so kind. Some of the things you don't want to share because they're private and you haven't come to grips with sharing that transition of your life. And you should be careful when I should be careful when I'm making relationships that I remember what somebody shares with me that's something they might not want me to put forward. So in a group,
you also remember whether something was private or something was not private. When you're in groups, you're in PMs, you're in
feel it. You feel it. You got to remember to feel it. That's how it happens. You empathize.
Why is a feeling an accurate mental model? It's just a feeling. It's not an accurate theory. It's just a feeling.
Well, it's like this. When you say something you shouldn't have said, you get that feeling, oh, Jesus, I shouldn't have said that. That's the feeling you should have had before you said it.
I might say, oh, that person is going to take umbrage. Now,
yes.
It turns out that people do take umbrage, because you see it happen all the time. But can you predict with any reliability when somebody you don't know very well is going to take umbrage? I can't.
Well, it's not about people you don't know very well. And that's a very good point. And that's the second point I wanted to make. When I do challenge people and act like debate mode, because that was a good question, and I want to be clear on this. I would not like it of myself if I challenged somebody who was talking about their personal beliefs or desires, and they're not trying to make them public upon other people, not trying to go into the public space and make claims that this is what you should do. As soon as you go public, and this is this public-private thing again, right? Like, how do you know if somebody's going public with what they're saying? So I try to distinguish between people who are trying to be authoritative and tell me what to do, and people who are just trying to share the way they live their lives, and maybe that would help me, maybe it wouldn't, but they're just, you know.
There's two words that are very different, authoritative and authoritarian. Authoritative is somebody who knows what they're talking about. Authoritarian is somebody who's dictating what other people should do. I can pretend to be authoritative on subjects where I have some depth, but authoritarian, no, thank you. I don't want to be the authority figure who directs other people. But I might be authoritative on some models. I say, here's a model that's been very well vetted, a model that anybody can look at, anybody can compute its predictions, and
I can ask you, as well, are you sure? You say, oh, yes, it's been very well vetted. And I say, can I see your sources?
No, what I say is, here's a model, here's a public model, here is what it predicts, or you can compute the predictions yourself because it's a computable model. And then you can compare the predictions to observations and say, okay, it agrees with this set of observations, but here's an anomaly. Over here's an anomaly where that model doesn't predict that anomaly. And that's really important because in systems thinking, the ones that you're interested in is where the model doesn't predict something. The anomaly that says, here's an example that doesn't fit the model. That's interesting.
Right. So what I guess what I'm also doing here is I'm working in the messy area where I don't think you want to commit.
I don't want to go into the messy antic area.
Yeah, right. Okay. And I'm saying that's where a lot of my art comes from. And my humanity.
Art. I mean, art is just art. I mean, I will take something that's
humanity
suitable and turn it into art, and as you know, or Schrecklish art. I call it Schrecklish art. It's just Schrecklish art, but it doesn't purport to be science. It's just art.
So I guess the deal is I'm trying to make compromises on perfection because I can't reach perfection, especially within a group like this. And I'm saying if this is the model that I have to deal with. No, if this is the model, I might not understand the model, but if this is the playground, we'll say that. If this is the environment, which I have to pick my subject, if these are the people I have to communicate with and understand.
Yeah, right? And you can only communicate with the people who have the patience to stay connected. And let me tell you something, it takes an enormous amount of patience to stay connected to people who just do nothing but talk. Because I'm a terrible listener.
Yeah, that's true. And
you can flood me with 1,000 words, and I might remember 3 of them.
So the idea is, if I'm presented with the GCC in an environment where I think understanding is important, and I realize I can't get a perfect model of everybody's mind, but I can lay out a sketch of their interests and the ones that seem to matter. As soon as I get into that private trauma stuff, it's like, I'm like you. I say, I don't want to know about your trauma. Like, I might need to know these things to know why I can't trust you. Like, maybe I should know this, or I don't know. It's like you get into that mental health area. I don't go there. I just take it for granted, which is a mistake. And David was talking today about, we got to be there for everybody's mental health. And Doug's all about the triggers. And I think the therapy that I think comes out of Gertrude's sessions is very interesting, and I do like it in the format that is private, right? Now we can report stuff out of there, but we should be very careful what we talk about there because it's kind of private. And is Gertrude a therapist? No. So I think she's got something larger where some self-help therapy might come out of it, but that's not her main goal.
She draws people to disclose, but she doesn't.
I see this.
Some people will disclose. My expectation is that among the population who go into Gertrude's sessions on Friday, I expect that you will be among the last to disclose.
No, well, the thing is if somebody tells me in in Gertrude's session that God Almighty predicts all of these things, so we best listen or we're going to hell. And that's what they say. I got a choice whether I want to.
What's it got to do with you? What you're going to disclose or not disclose has got nothing to do with anybody else. The question is, if you're ever in the hot seat and that's your choice, will you say, okay, my turn to be in the hot seat, and I'm going to disclose? It's got nothing to do with anybody else.
No, it does. It's like what David said today. Like David said, he'd continue that conversation with me. Like, we don't exactly know what he means by spiritual, for example. And is it just, again, the universe and magic of the awe? Or is it just helping hands, right?
Well,
like
what the definition of the universe, which is, you gave Carl Sagan's definition of cosmos: all that is or ever was or ever will be. The phrase all that is or ever was or ever will be is simply a linguistic phrase in English. Okay. Now, where else can you find the phrase all that is or ever was or ever will be as it would attached to a word other than cosmos? It's
but do we know
of cosmos according to Carl Sagan? But it's also,
we assume this though too. We assume
but the phrase all that is or ever was or ever will be wasn't invented by Carl Sagan. That phrase has been in the literature for 3,500 years.
Where's I could challenge you on that. I could say, well, what's the point you're trying to make? Is it that Carl Sagan didn't come up with it, or that the claim is true?
No,
or how much
that is the definition of another word.
Oh, okay. Semantics. Okay.
So you can say that's the definition of the word cosmos, but there are other synonyms that have the same definition. That's what synonyms mean. Different words have the same definition.
So I guess what it comes down to me in the end is I'm expecting to be confused because I don't expect I know. So I have to ask to validate. That person could be confused too. But at least I might know what they're thinking, even if they are.
Go back and look at the literature and see, here's that phrase attached to another word. And that's in the literature. So it's in the literature.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was segueing from definitions because that's the game of discernment that I talk about, that you have to go through before you get at least a little bit of an idea of what the person's thinking when they say that word. And when it comes to personalities to adapt to, it'd be nice if you had them publish their verified set. Some people, like, for example, I know in this group, people are a lot more spiritual-ish, what I call woo-woo, than in the general public.
Why would you call it woo-woo? That's kind of an insulting expression. Why would you want to insult people that way?
Well, I don't think woo-woo is insulting from my point of view. And if it does insult
your point of view, it's their point. If they feel insulted, it doesn't matter that you don't think it is. The fact is they feel insulted.
Well, I think they should agree with me that it is woo-woo because it can't have any evidence to prove it. They just feel it's true. When it's no longer woo-woo,
everything you say you feel is true. Otherwise, why would you say it?
Well, I don't know about acupuncture and reading people's minds and stuff, right? Like people do come forward and say, I can read your mind. So some woo-woo person comes into the group and says, I can read all your minds. That's woo-woo.
Can you read somebody's body language? That's visible.
Well, you can't define somebody that says they got ESP. Now, just come on. It hasn't been done.
I'm talking about ESP. I gave a demonstration of two gestures, physical, visible gestures, that somebody in my past felt they were very, very keen on reading nonverbal gestures and facial expressions. And here I had two that were very idiosyncratic to me. And this person says, I've never seen those gestures before. I have no idea what they mean. And I didn't even know I was using those gestures. They just happen to be idiosyncratic to me.
They're tics, right? We all have tics.
No, they're not.
I put my hand up here a lot, right? But people know that means I'm thinking, right? Maybe I'm thinking, maybe I'm just trying to hide my fat neck.
Well, you were there yesterday when this meant I'm holding back speaking because it's not my turn.
No, you don't know. That's the theory of mind that you
keep saying. That was the point. The point is that the same gesture has different meanings in different contexts.
You might be wrong. You have to baseline it. The point is you can't just tell what somebody means without baselining them, if you know anything about body language. But anyway, I just learned about it because these guys on YouTube were all over the debates with this. Body language was a big thing for me for about a month.
By the way, most of the time you have your camera off, which means I cannot read the expressions on your face. I can't see where your eyes are pointed. I can't see if you're awake or asleep or if you attendance. I can't read whether you're smiling or frowning. I get almost zero data from reading your
you already said you
countenance.
get zero data anyway, so it shouldn't make a difference.
Well, I can tell if you're laughing or frowning, or if you're asleep.
Yeah,
You're
I'm just saying
attention.
you have a really high criteria for saying the definition of mind. There's nothing wrong with that. That's academically.
Fears, emotions, backstory, issues,
Well, you
beliefs,
may or may not be right about that. That's your creation.
assumptions of knowledge. That's not
That's
my
your
definition.
idea.
That's the definition in the literature.
Maybe it could be. I don't know. It makes sense. But for example, I saw a really cool graph last night that was talking about different worldviews, and it had 6 or 7 of them. Really interesting. They had the integral method. They had, geez, I can't even name them. They're just so.
That was I can't remember the guy's name.
They come out of that group, Stoa group, or I don't know.
Hang on a second, I'm gonna go pee. Well,
Yeah.
you can keep talking if you want, because it doesn't matter. I won't remember it anyway.
Yeah, I should probably go anyway. But yeah, I wanted to impress upon you the idea of following through conversations. So I'm going to go off camera. Check the messages. Oh, she made it. That looks good. Lunch for tomorrow and Monday. Yay. Yum, yum. Great. No more squeaking. Squirming. Squeaking. Oh, doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. Interesting. I will listen to these and get back to you. I heard part of the first one. Thank you. Oh, my mic's on. Interested to know if Sam's still around.
Well, he's still recording. No, in terms of personal values, I have to confess, this is a confession. Taking care of bodily functions is a higher priority in my value system than listening to Colin Kilburn. What's the word you use? Spitballing? I think that's your term of art.
Yeah, well, I think you're right in a way, because I am in the innovative design space, not in the make sure this protocol that I found works space. And if the protocol, and I'm looking for models that can help me in that space. So if there is a protocol or model, then I'm more than welcome, or more happy to find it. Just
Well,
making a copy.
if you tell me what phenomenon you're looking for a model of, if I happen to know of or have in my own possession a model of some phenomenon, I'll direct you to it. Because I'd rather direct you to a model that you're looking for, or at least one that you might find as a stepping stone to the model you want. Because you might find terminology that goes with that class of models.
No, that's absolutely true, and that's why I like Heiner so much, because he's a man looking for a model to explain a lot.
Well, Heiner told me, I didn't know this about Heiner. Heiner's been following me for years, and I didn't even know he existed. I mean, he hadn't popped up and says, "Wow, Barry, I've been following your stuff for years." But Heiner is also somebody who likes to do model-based reasoning, and anybody who does model-based reasoning is always looking for models. I mean, I have a lot of models that I didn't develop. I got them from other people. But that's what we traffic in models. So I will build a half a dozen models in my career, and I'll not even trade them. I'll just put them out there, and then I look for other people's models where I haven't got one.
Yeah, well, the question is, which models are extending other models? Which models are unique? Which models have been long tested?
And which models are in conflict? So, for example, quantum mechanics and gravitational mechanics, these are very powerful models, but they're in conflict. They do not mesh. Einstein's model of gravitational mechanics, relativity, and quantum mechanics, these two models don't mesh. They don't fit together like jigsaw puzzles. Like two continents want to fit together neatly, they don't. And this has been true for practically a century.
And string theory isn't helping.
Well, there's a lot of people working on it. There's a lot of people trying to figure out how can come up with a model in which Einstein's relativity and Feynman and whoever else's quantum mechanics neatly mesh together, and the two halves of the jigsaw puzzle, the two continents, fit like South America and Africa are supposed to fit. This is the problem with fundamental physics, is they've got conflicting models, and they know it. They don't argue about it. They don't argue about it. They say, "Oh yeah, this model makes this predictions in the cosmos, and this model makes these predictions in subatomic space," and in between they don't agree. And
so
they don't argue over it. They just simply say, "How can we resolve this non-meshing phenomenon?"
Yeah, equation for everything. I understand. If I back away and become a little bit more meta, I see that you're a model person, I'm a model person, engineering. Joel likes models, Heiner likes models, Sam likes models, Neil Davidson, God bless his soul, he likes models.
That's what systems thinkers do. They do model-based reasoning. But here's the
thing.
So
why couldn't we have an interesting half an hour show where each one of us each week brings a model that we think is really cool?
Well, I don't know if you were there. I don't think you were. I did that on a couple of sessions, but I don't.
But I mean as sprouts, not to take everybody, like make the GCC barn raising model offshoot. Like Gertrude has this thing where she took over Friday with Doug, but I'm thinking that something else could go back into the experiments of Friday, because I think Gertrude's experiment is successful. But the thing is, people, the GCC label is a problem, right? So it's not an accurate
model, because GCC isn't global. It's a cult of, I don't know, 3 dozen people maybe who are active.
Well, it's a time and place.
And although we reside in different parts of the globe, we're not a global phenomenon. We're just a little cult of 3 dozen people who meet, 4 days a week and shoot the breeze.
Yeah, well, the fact that it isn't a grand meeting, it doesn't change
Not
the
a
fact.
plenary session. It's not a colloquium. It's not
Hold
a
on, hold on. It is a time.
plenary session. It's just
It is a time.
a
All I'm saying is some people wake up on a certain day and say, you know what, I'm going to tune into GCC. That's all I'm saying. So
which means it's entertainment. It's a coffee clutch. It's entertainment.
Yeah, you can characterize it as that, but that's not the point. The point is that it's at a certain time. So I'm thinking, if Gertrude is doing her appreciators at the time when GCC's experiments is going on, what if we started the Friday experiments with the models again? Would that be two GCC shows happening at the same time? Or would we pick it? Would she pick a different time, or would we pick a different time, or what's going on?
Doug discloses the model, and Gertrude executes as an example of it. So every
Yeah,
week,
but that's not Friday experiments,
the
though.
model, and then Gertrude has a subject in the hot seat, and they exemplify the model with the real case. Every week they do.
All I'm saying is I don't think the appreciators has GCC as the umbrella.
It's happenstance. They had a vacant slot, and Gertrude came in and filled it.
Well,
it's not really part of GCC. It just happens to be that you had a vacant hour or 2 hours in the channel, and Doug says,
that's it. You got it. What is the channel? That's what I'm trying to define. And you have a mental model of this channel's 4 days at a certain time of the day, depending on.
Doug explained. He says we have 3 Zoom accounts. One belongs to Tammy. One belongs to Doug.
We don't. They do. We share it.
GCC has 3 participants, one of which is now gone. Tammy's not there anymore. But she let Doug have her credentials, her Zoom credentials. So on Thursdays, if I think I have this right, on Thursdays, Doug uses Tammy's credentials, and on Friday and Sunday, he uses his Zoom credentials for Sunny unblocking and Gertrude on Friday. And then Sam uses his Zoom credentials today.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm saying is if we had a protocol of growing sprouts, like a tool show, model show, right? What would it look like? Would it be something that if we really liked it, it would go into the Friday spot to get highlighted and then migrate out to its success? Or does first come, first serve, and now we're jammed up? No, that's Gertrude's now. We have to pick another time, which is fine too.
Rule in college, you can take 5 solids if you really want to study hard.
That's right.
That's right. Take more than 5 solids because there aren't enough hours in the day.
Right, but what I'm saying is,
you don't have enough capacity in your brain to attend to 5 solids in a semester.
I think a curriculum is a good way to look at this. What I'm questioning. And so, an individual can only go to so many courses, but the professors don't own the university either.
No, they own their time slots.
Right. So I'm saying, the way that you characterize the room, is it allowed, how do we adjust the schedule of the curriculum for people? And in GCC, they haven't thought about that. We have one, and I'm saying that's fine.
It grew organically. It grew organically.
Fine, but no, what I'm saying is
started one, and then she dropped out and handed off the show to Doug, who kept Tammy's Zoom credentials, but became the new host.
So it's about the person.
Alex Trebek died. That's going to be a new host of Jeopardy.
No, but what I'm saying, Jeopardy is an institution. Jeopardy is an institution. The GCC is not.
3 decades.
The GCC is. What I'm saying is quite simple. And the idea of curriculum is good. And the idea of, are we growing, or are we just going to keep with the constraints we have? And what are the constraints? What are the constraints? And I'm telling you about the constraints, and you're going off on tangents.
Constraints are,
but that's fine.
What you do on Zoom, what you do on Facebook.
No, what I'm saying is, let's do the Venn diagram of what the GCC is, and then Gertrude's place within there would be a lot more clear than just squatters' rights.
I'm not stopping you.
Yeah, no, that's one project. Well, exactly. I think that's important because it is changing, and what somebody thought a year ago might not be what's happening now. As I tried to say, you never saw Doug's deep dives, right? You never saw the deep dives Doug did. He took over barn raising for 6 to 8 months.
No, I wasn't here then. I've only been around, I think, since October.
Yeah, so barn raising was completely taken over, and that's how I feel that Gertrude's done to Friday. Just kind of done her experiment, gave her 6 to 8 months. It was successful.
I get a lot out of Gertrude's session. I think people get more out of Gertrude's sessions on Friday than the other 3 combined.
Right, and I'm saying so.
I
So
think it's
success
my
means,
observation.
this is what I'm saying. Does her success mean that she gets to own the Friday slot, or is that a GCC experiment slot? It was started as an experiment slot. Tammy abandoned it, right? So Gertrude took it over, but was Tammy the GCC? Was Tammy's Zoom the GCC? And that's what I'm saying. Have we grown to the part where,
I don't think I've even seen text or video of Tammy, because I've only been here since October. I think she was gone before
well,
October.
she used to do some, one of the things she did really well was some one-on-one interviews with people like Hollow Chain and a whole bunch of other people. And she's very,
They're
yeah,
probably up on YouTube if I wanted to go find them.
oh, I can help you. I can help you find them all. Yeah.
Thing is,
And that's part, that's part of
I
it.
can't watch 300 hours worth of YouTube. I don't have 300 hours to watch.
No, that's why people like me go and take the transcripts, put them into a searchable format.
Well, you'll take
you can
2
go
hours
and fish
and
them
boil
out.
it down to 10 minutes.
Well, that's what I was proposing earlier before we got off onto some different tangents. Like,
and I think that's a good idea. But who's
Yeah.
going to be the editor who says, out of 2.5 hours of a particular session, these 10 minutes are the takeaway?
well,
You could say,
verify.
okay, you could say, I'm going to be the editor who decides the takeaway. Or you can go to Sam and say, Sam, what do you think is the takeaway that you want done? And you'll do the legwork.
Yeah.
Fine. Now, the only takeaway that I had yesterday was at the very end when I said, Tara, you knocked my socks off.
Yes.
That's the only takeaway that I would want ever, because the rest of it, I'm just sort of listening. I don't say very much.
No, I think encouraging each other is probably one of the best things we can do for each other when we see something and we can encourage each other. I think that's, very valuable. And it's,
my encouragement to you is go public.
well, the thing is I've got a lot of different, I got my self spread pretty thin, and I'm not going to use that as an excuse, but that's to not producing something, but I'm really trying.
Warm data. What you're producing is what Nora calls warm data, which is tons and tons of stuff, like all these jigsaw puzzle pieces just kind of scattered on the table. That's the warm data, but you haven't assembled them into the big picture. Nora has this concept of synesthesia and warm data, where she can take all this, chatter, this coffee talk chatter for hours and hours and hours of coffee talk, and boil it down the way Tira did yesterday to like one word, or the way that Gertrude does it on Friday, boil it down to the title of one story or book, or 1 or 2 sentences or a phrase. At the end, she says, boil it down to just 2 or 3 words.
Yes.
And that's what I try to do. I'm sitting here, I'm going, what phrase?
That means you're ready. That means you're ready.
But look what I got to do. I got to sift through 2.5 hours of talking, which is hard for me to do because I'm a terrible listener, and pick out a sentence or a phrase that is the takeaway, encapsulates the whole thing.
You did fine. You did fine with relating to what Tira said. That was important to you. You can explain why that's important to you, and I think that would be beautiful if we did a Zoom together where I'm producing what you're saying
right now. We're doing a Zoom together for about 30 minutes.
The only problem with it, the only thing we're missing is but the only thing we're missing is,
I don't think anybody's going to watch it, but Sam's going to.
You're right, because it wasn't recorded. I was just about to say we could.
No, it says in red up here, recording. Look up in the left,
Tira,
recording.
Tira wasn't recorded. I couldn't put a video of her down here at the bottom and you and me comment on what she had said, because that's what I'm talking about. Like, wouldn't Tira love to see a video of you and me talking about how well she did during this?
I mean, you can ask Tira, but I don't think she would love it.
Well, maybe not.
Maybe
but the point is,
I don't know. I mean,
I think this is the feedback that we could do to keep focus and a memory on what's important with honoring the individual. That's one. So that's me honoring Tyra. That's me honoring Barry's.
He's Tira, and the other one is Tyra. The other one, Tyra, I forget Tyra's last name. There's Tira, and there's Tira Scott and Tyra. What's Tyra's last name?
I don't know Tira Scott.
Tira Scott is the one yesterday.
Oh, I haven't really met her.
She was the one that I said, you knocked my socks off.
Oh, I thought you said Tyra.
Tyra is the other. There's 2 of them with the same name, but they're pronounced differently.
Okay, I'm having a mind fuck. Whatever.
The one who has the plaque that says "Don't be a dick" behind her on the shelf. That's
Yes.
Tara Scott.
Tira, yes.
She introduces herself as Tara Scott. She doesn't even use her last. The other one introduces herself as Tyra, and I'm now forgetting her last name. But it's
Well, I was getting Tyra's name. I was getting Tyra's name wrong many times because I was saying Tira, and eventually I got it right, Tyra. So that's what I think she likes, Tyra. Otherwise, I'm wrong.
Yesterday says Tira.
Okay, well, we'll pause this and come back to it.
That. I could be wrong too,
Yeah.
but I
right. We'll pause
I listened carefully when she introduced herself, and because I wanted to go back down which is Tira and which is Tyra.
Yeah, well, and it's a small point, but it's important because it's somebody's name. So we can go back and just say we can agree to disagree that we don't know for sure, and that's the whole beauty of it. Like we don't that when you can't agree to divert to another session or to continue on, it's just it's lost.
In fact, when Bill came on, he says
null plus null is null.
When Bill came on, he said Christine invited me here. I said, Christine, who's Christine? Turns out that on Facebook, Tara Scott is Burning B. Christensen.
Yes.
So I think that Bill got Burning B. Christensen and said, Christine invited me here. And I didn't know who Christine was.
There you go. Yeah. I don't think I saw that.
That's why it's really easy to get confused on names because.
And I didn't see the introduction. I was late, as you remember. I was debating whether to go or not because it is a lot. It takes a lot out of me to go to those Friday sessions because I really do have to be present, and it really is. It's something that I wouldn't want to do recorded because it reaches into that part.
That's why I think you might end up being in the hot seat someday, maybe in a few weeks on Friday.
Oh, I have been,
and only because it's not recorded.
Yeah, well, I've been in the hot seat a few times. I've been in the hot seat here in the GCC recorded too, several times. I've had people call me everything in the book. And I guess they say my superpower is my persistence.
Return the favor.
Well, the thing is that I find it's very hard for me to be understood.
It is.
When I'm not holding the premise.
Long PM, and I don't understand much of anything of it.
Well, I find that hard to believe that you don't understand what it is that I've said that I'm trying to do. Whether you understand how I could do it, you think I'm a fool, that's another matter that we can talk about.
What I don't understand, what I understand of what you do is you talk a lot. You spitball a lot.
I build journey maps. Have you seen my journey maps? Have you seen my journey maps?
I've heard about them, I've never seen one.
Okay, well then you don't have anything to speak upon.
I have no idea what your mental models are. And I don't think I'll ever get an idea what your mental models are.
The idea is that I did have.
If I ever see one.
Well, hold on. Sam tried to address this, and he gave us each a day. I think it was just before you came. Maybe you came at the end of that. He gave us each a session to not only moderate but present what we wanted to.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, and the problem is that I needed a data butler to help me because I can't do both things at once. And plus, I wasn't ready. I'd never done that before, which was very useful. But what I come to understand is that you need two sessions. One, to unpack the idea and have people say, yes, I understand. And then they might have some homework or something to think about so that when they come back the next day, they're ready to say, well, and if somebody new comes, what do you do, right? So
but then the question is, what's your homework? What's your preparation? Before a professor gets up in class and presents something, that professor has done an enormous amount of homework to prepare the material. They're not going to get up and say, okay, I got a whole bunch of stuff to talk about. This is what Jordan Peterson does. He says, I had this box of memes. I like a jigsaw puzzle. I have this huge box of memes. I'm just going to pick a meme at random and toss it in the air and mention it. I'm going to pick another meme and toss it in the air. And at the end of the hour, he's presented a whole bunch of jigsaw puzzle pieces, but he never assembled them into a coherent picture.
And when he does it in a way that irritates me.
I've never seen him do it.
Well, he comes to some conclusions and extrapolations.
Yeah, I mean, but what I see is he this is what they say, he's not even wrong. If you say,
I like his data. I like his data.
That's not even wrong.
No, but I think he's got good raw data. He's got good raw data. In my mind, he is really smart in his own field. Whether I can't challenge him, and some people are going to agree with him, some people aren't, but he makes a lot of sense when it comes to this sociology.
He says this meme is relevant. True. This meme is relevant. Now, it may conflict with that meme, but they're relevant. So he tosses a bunch of memes in the air, and then at the end, he say, what did you learn? Well, I just learned, I learned that there's a bunch of memes.
There's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with debating with yourself.
Well, the point is that what I want to do is I want to paint a picture so that somebody can actually see the big. This is the assembling the jigsaw puzzle so you can see the big picture, and that's what a lot of people don't do very well if they do it at all. They say, "I'm going to give you all the memes and you assemble the jigsaw puzzle." Thanks, but no thanks. Except for one case. I will tell you the one case where I will gladly assemble the jigsaw puzzle if it's a good mystery, like a Columbo mystery. So people toss out all these clues to the well, crime is the wrong word here, but you know, and the detective will put all the clues together to get to the ground truth because nobody has the ground truth. And I love those kinds of jigsaw, those kinds of mysteries, the Columbo mysteries, and that's why I use the Socratic method, because that's also what Columbo does. He uses the Socratic method. Just one more thing. Why? Because the perpetrator is tossing out mutually conflicting and misleading memes. He's trying to lead Columbo off the track. And Columbo is trying to take all the evidence and all the clues and get one coherent picture. And so when the perpetrator tosses out a bogus clue, a misleading clue, and then Columbo comes back later and says it doesn't mate to the other stuff, he'll say, "Oh, one more thing," you know. And what happens is the perpetrator eventually tosses out two conflicting memes that obviously can't both be true, or some other thing that he could not have known, except that he was the perpetrator. That's how he knew it. So this whole Socratic thing is how Columbo solves the mystery, and that's the kind of data processing that I find fascinating, that I wouldn't mind doing.
Right. And you saying that makes me, as a GCC member, think of a way that I could help you do that.
Well, it's easy.
Or how that would relate.
It's easy. Say you've got one jigsaw puzzle piece right here. You bring it up. You say, now this jigsaw puzzle piece isn't just free floating. It has neighboring ones all around it. And let me find all the ones that attach to it beautifully. Now I've got a molecule. I've got 7 or 8 jigsaw puzzles that all fit neatly, but now they have their new frontier. Now let's find all the next ones that neatly mate to it.
Well, that's the template.
The jigsaw puzzle outward, piece by piece, and don't leave any gaps.
That to me is nothing more than the game of discernment, which is probably the Socratic method in a trail.
Well, what's the next piece that fits?
What do you mean by this? Okay, well, what do you mean by that? Right. So if it's a mystery, it's like, well, when did you see what? Right.
Yeah. And if all you got is this jumble of jigsaw puzzle pieces, you never get to putting it together, because that's the hard work. That's reducing the entropy. You have the high entropy box of disassembled jigsaw puzzle, and they have the low entropy where it's completely assembled and every piece is connected to its neighbor, and there's no gaps and there's no wrong pieces in the wrong place. And then you see the big picture. That's the insight, and that's the insight that Tira got to. She took all these little bits and pieces for an hour and a half, and she fitted them together literally in real time and said, "Here's the big picture. Here's the insight."
I think Gertrude actually nailed it within the first 20 minutes of me being there.
Well, then I missed it, but I haven't got the video to go back and look at that. So.
No, what I'm saying is Tyra has a good way of being like that. It almost feels like a psychic routine. Like, I'm feeling this and I'm getting the idea of that, and it just sounded psychic to me. But it's just because
she talked about her own feelings. This is the intuition. You see, how do you elevate intuition, which is really kind of
no. I'm not saying it was intuition. Gertrude also had the intuition. What I'm saying is Tyra had the drama, where Gertrude's struggling with the English language.
Well, that was the point, because very often Gertrude, whose native language I think is German, so she has a relatively small English vocabulary compared to, say, me or Tira. So Tira goes. I understand. I actually understand her very well. I'm never usually confused, but sometimes she has to re-choose words,
and it keeps her from being that natural thing that Tara knows what she's going to say
Well, if we were
next.
doing
It's
that in
rhyme and
German, I would be
rhyme.
totally lost, and Gertrude will know exactly what she. I mean, there's a lot of very interesting words that are borrowed from German because they don't exist in the English dictionary.
Yeah, but my point was I wasn't as impressed with Tyra because
Here.
Tyra, yeah, Tyra. I call her Tyra. So
That's the other one with the same name.
I don't know. You said maybe they're the same person. It's Christine.
No. They're definitely two different people with the same spelling,
Okay.
different pronunciations.
I had the phone issue yesterday too, where I was only looking at 4 people at a time. So I wasn't really studying the people, but I was listening to the message more than looking at the people. And that's what, a lot of times I find I have to come back and look at the screen because some guy just threw up a model and I go, oh, damn, I have to go find my phone because I'm doing the dishes or something, listening to a podcast. And all of a sudden I got to go see what this guy's trying to show me, or I won't understand what he's saying next. But as far as reading his face, I don't need to read his face for the most part. No, not unless it's art.
Well, yeah, but I think that reading faces, at least on Zoom. So for example, if you remember one time that I went into this pose, I stared, the 1,000-yard stare. I stared blankly into the infinite distance like this.
But to me, your head is about the size of half a pea. So I can barely tell you're wearing glasses. So if you rolled your eyes, I wouldn't know.
Yeah. But
unless I could make you full screen.
That you're not.
That's what I should probably do. I should probably make you full screen, and then I can really see you. See, now I'm getting into your body language because it does give an extra bit of information.
I sent a lot of information non-verbally, and you were not attending to it or could not attend to it either because of technology or
that's why. Yeah.
Whatever.
If you want to use body language, do what Jazz does and says, I want to look into your eyes, young man. And then I know that I'm in a conversation with a gentleman who wants to see into my eyes. And so that's what I just did. Just put you full screen, turned you landscape, and now I can see you.
I mean, actually, I think I was holding a, maybe it was this one.
But what I was trying to say is that, a lot of times, yeah, that's right. But a lot of times body language is 70% of what's being communicated, if not everything.
It's like 90% of the communication.
But I find when you're in one of these intellectual type of forums, it's more about what the person is saying, and you can hear it in their voice. If they're doing something strange with their body language, that's like Schnabenoff tick or whatever, that German guy always touching his nose, going like this, that philosopher guy, what's his name? Is he German or Russian or Pulaski? I can't even. Zizek. Zizek.
I don't know that.
Zizek. You don't know Zizek?
Zizek, never heard of him.
Okay, I'll send you a link. I'm sure you do. I'm pronouncing it wrong, but he's the guy that's always touching his nose, and he knows he has ticks. And the students would come up to him and ask him for advice. He said, "What are you asking me for advice? Do you see a man in front of you that looks like he knows how to give you advice?"
My advice to you is to take no advice from me, including this piece.
Well, I think that's the point. Like I do appreciate to understand why you make the discernments you make. So if you have a high bar for the idea of mind, I agree with you, but I'm willing to play in the messy area where some of them might be wrong. And I only want these many because I think the conversation is important between me and that person, or that person and that person. And I've got a bit of the outline of the puzzle. I've got a few of the pieces. Would you guys please fucking fill the rest of it in yourselves without ruining the thing or setting it on fire or killing anybody? You know what I mean? Or how far can we get? And tomorrow when I come back, are you going to have the puzzle switched? Or are we going to have a whole new puzzle?
Okay. I don't know if you followed the drama when Bibi got ejected from EOST, but I went through a sequence of hypotheses, and I'm not sure how many of them were wrong. Every time I found out that one of my hypotheses was wrong, within 12 hours, I said, oh, my last hypothesis was wrong, because I got new evidence that falsified it. For example, I learned, and I think Sam learned on December 6th, that Bibi had been ejected from EOS and hadn't told anybody. And she told me and Sam and maybe one other person, possibly, on December 6th. So we learned about it. Now we think, okay, Bibi just found out, just before December 6th, that she's no longer in the group. Well, then it must have been something that happened recently. Well, what happened recently? Well, on November 9th, she had published a very long blog post based on material that she picked up in a conversation in GCC. And the only thing that I knew about BB is that on November 9th, there was a bunch of us in a conversation on GCC, and she got real enthused about the content, and she wrote a really long blog post about it. And very likely that's the content that she had put into EOST, because that's the only thing.
I remember that. It was about you telling her a story that related to witnessing.
Bearing accurate witness and
accurate
Once Upon a
witnessing.
Time, the TV show.
And you know, and that's good food for her. And
I got real excited about that material. She wrote a very long blog, which you could say was very long, well, too long. And
well,
I guess and it was viewed as spam because it was just.
I like the way she puts the little video montages in there. Like, I find a synergy with that, with her.
But here's the funny thing.
She does her art. Yeah.
It took, I don't know, close to a month to discover that she was blocked way back on October 27th.
I don't know.
Blocked on October 27th. Then it couldn't have been the stuff that happened in November.
Well, somebody was being authoritarian. That's what's going on.
Well, there was an admin who saw.
And that's different than the authority. That's different. I got no place for people overstepping their authority or their authoritarian. It's even worse because if somebody's an authoritarian, they have the switch, right?
The switch. They saw a video that was under BB's login identity and discerned it to be spam. That's all we knew. Discerned it to be spam and nuked her. Didn't just delete it. Kicked her out of EOST, blocked her out of EOST, and deleted that particular item and everything 7 days earlier. Now, we didn't learn that until late. So as soon as I learned that she was blocked on October 27th, well, then it couldn't have been anything that she posted in November. So
suppose this guy learned that from John Kelvin. That sounds like a John Kelvin move to me. He keeps a very clean space. So
the point is I was trying to figure out what happened and why. And the only evidence I had pointed to something that was posted in November. But it turned out that was wrong because it took
October
a long time to go back in the log and discover that no, the event took place on October 27th. And
so did the person who blocked the blocker, did they have to did they review the material that they blocked her for and give a reason why?
Just said it was spam and gave what they remembered it was, which was supposedly a video about fishing with eggs.
Fishing with eggs? How did I miss that one?
So there's a bunch of videos that you can find. If you Google fishing with eggs, you can find maybe 4 videos of people next to a lake shore, and there's a hole in the shoreline. And
I've seen some of those before. Weird fishing ones.
Egg in it, and it brings the fish either to the surface or they jump out, and you can literally with your hands catch the fish. And these are videos that you can find. And the question is, are these videos legit? And I think they are. Why? Because in Cambodia, this is a technique that's been used for decades. It's a real technique. Now the thing is that the notion that getting fish out of these holes that are next to a lake or a sea, they're real, but none of them mention using eggs as some kind of a bait or toxin or whatever it's used for. So yes, there is this fishing in hidey holes, but the explanation of how they work is not what you gather from watching the video. So are the videos real, legit, or are they staged for some nefarious purpose? And that I don't know the answer to. I've seen both arguments. But anyway, this person says, maybe posted this video of fishing with eggs and it's spam and nuked. Now, here's the thing. The nuking practice deletes that video, kicks them out of the group, blocks them from seeing into the group, and everything 7 days earlier than that is also erased. So if you go back 10 days to October 20th, No.
October 6th?
October 7th. I think it's the 17th. Yeah,
Okay.
you have to go back to October 17th. So this nuking thing would leave anything prior to October 20th would still be there. And October 17th, there was this long conversation in which BB was a participant, Sam was a participant, I think. I was a participant. So there's
I saw
this
that
long
one.
conversation, which all the players except the one who kicked her out was present. So she was clearly a member in good standing. So here's the thing. He kicks her out, and she's a member in good standing who had been part of a long conversation, very cordial conversation, 10 days earlier.
But I understand what you're saying. But I think the point, from the way I understand it, just give it to you, is that recently there's been even more talk on the Sapiens. And Peter came in last and said something a few days ago, I think it was a few days ago, about how this is fantasy, or her contributions, or what she was writing in the actual post. So it was on the Sapiens blog.
It was her version. You remember the Rashomon thing? Different people are giving the same report of what happened. So she gave her report. Peter gave.
Well, that's right. That's right. But the point wasn't about the report.
He's saying her report is fantasy.
Well, not only that her report is fantasy, but her ways of dealing with sharing information is fantasy. So I think he was a little bit more broad than just, because she is into writing characterizations, like you were saying.
Detailed analyses.
Yes, and I've picked up on that. So Peter, all I wanted to say was Peter's very utilitarian. As in that comment, why don't you spend your efforts working on real problems and stop wasting your time?
As if that problem isn't a real problem.
He's just a different worldview. Those are those different worldviews, right?
Being blocked for no good reason.
I'm going to send you that diagram. I'm going to send you that diagram about the different worldviews, and they were just on two different streams, right?
Being kicked out of a group for no good reason. Were you present when we talked about annihilation about a few days ago? I don't know if you were there that day. Stacy asked the question, what do you mean by annihilation? And I think Doug was the host, and he says, it's being wiped out. I said the same thing. It's being wiped out. Doesn't mean being thrown into the ovens in the Holocaust. That's annihilation, but if you're financially wiped out, if your career is wiped out, your livelihood is wiped out. These are all examples of annihilation. And when we talk
of an individual,
what do you mean by annihilation? Being wiped out.
That's an annihilation of an individual.
Yeah. Well, it can be a cult. It can be an ethnic group. It can be could be a planet. Genocide. It can be a genocide.
Could be a planet. Could be a whole planet.
Well, yeah. So the point is that people have fear of annihilation at some level in their set of fears, and in the social networks, for example, I have a correspondent, lovely person, and told me in PM that they have been put in Facebook jail for a month. I said, what? And she says, well, I posted this photo from the Wednesday riots. This is one of the photos that was on the Wednesday riots. The guy with the horns, and other people, okay. They were all kind of clustered, and I think it was a selfie. And there was maybe a snarky legend over it. I don't remember what the legend was, but the point is that the guy with the horns, he had something like a shawl on, but his chest was bare, was full of tattoos and stuff, but he didn't have any clothing on his chest. And the bot, whatever, I think it had to be a bot who flagged it, says this is nudity and sexuality or something like that. I can't remember the exact word. It was nudity and sexual something or other. And
for somebody.
And so the bot put her in Facebook jail for a month for a photograph that came from that Wednesday thing. And there's no appeal. you can say, you can go to Facebook and say, I object. Nothing will happen. They won't pay any attention to it. So, that's now it's an affront. It's an affront to be convicted of something without a trial, where the whole thing is ridiculous.
Yeah, private highway too, right? It's a private highway.
So being kicked, being annihilated, quote unquote, in your social net, that's your, you spend your life, you're in lockdown, you're home all day because you're in lockdown. The only people that you can communicate with is on the social networks, and suddenly that's turned off for no good reason.
Yeah.
It's devastating.
I think you can really relate to that, and that's probably why you took up her cause, and I'm sure she appreciated it.
I took up her cause because I thought I was the contributor to the content. And also because she only told two people. She told me and she told Sam. And this is right after
Peter definitely wasn't supportive in the way I would like to see him be, to reach out to a member and tell them that they're just living in fantasy.
Well, I think it's fair to say he became defensive. But what happened, and this is something I think Sam and Doug will agree on, the aftermath generated an enormous amount of what Nora would call warm data. There was all that warm data on my timeline. Now there's warm data over on Debbie's page. There's the warm data on her blog. There's the warm data where we discussed it, here in GCC, where it's up now on YouTube, even though we didn't necessarily mention everybody's name, but everybody knew what we're talking. This is like the elephant in the room, like Mokita. Everybody knows the truth, but we don't actually mention anything by name. So there's this tons and tons of warm data. And Sam's point is that we claim to be systems thinkers. So
that is true. That's a point.
And so the point is that if this had happened in any other random group, blow it off.
It's not so anal. It's not so anal when it's system thinkers failing system thinking.
So here's the thing. So system thinkers, a very prominent systems thinker makes what's called a type 1 error.
Yeah, type 1, type 2. I heard all that. Yeah.
Right. And so the type 1 error is revealed to be a type 1 error, but it's just not a one-off event that's never happened before, never happen again. It's a recurring phenomenon. And when you have type 1 errors or type 2 errors that are recurring phenomena in systems thinking, you say, oh, we have this statistical pattern of type 1 and type 2 errors. Can we improve our practices so we reduce the incidence of type 1 and type 2 errors, so we don't have these things blowing up, this aftermath which are blowing up? Because
guidelines.
Because it looks bad if you're trying to promote systems thinking as a concept and as a practice, and if you can't fix it in your own house, then how are you going to fix the type 1, type 2 errors out in the public if you can't even fix them in your own house?
Well, now you're getting on to the point that interests me from the meta level, which is, first of all, I can't say that every conversation we have at GCC is important. In fact, most
of them are forgettable.
Well, you can judge them the way you want. I'm just saying not all of them are. But I would like to focus on the things I feel are, and that's from me, right? Yeah.
That means you need an audience, because you can't focus on them unless you can converse to somebody else about them.
Actually, I want the audience of the people who are trying to make the point. Like, for example, I think there's a couple of things we talked about today that I would be interested in helping you grow a sprout, doing the thing that excites you, as opposed to nitpicking me, right? Like, you can nitpick me.
I wouldn't do it on Zoom. I've already done it on my blog, and I would spend, say, 10 minutes in a Zoom session giving you a teaser. But I say, if you really want to dial into this, it's a semester-long course at the graduate level of college. I'm not going to do that on Zoom. That's crazy.
No, I don't blame you, and I think
that's very true. I can give you a teaser of it, and then say, here's the material that you can review the material, and it will probably take you a month to work your way down, but you can see all of it in a page, well, about 3 pages of a website. Yeah. But it's a semester's worth of material at the graduate level.
So so there's a couple things I see where, because I'm looking at improving what I'm trying to do to be understood and what I can do to understand other people. You know, it's a two-way street, but I'm only responsible for making my message more clear and asking the questions that I hope will cause clarity from other people. If I trigger them, I'm sorry. If it sounds like I'm debating them, I'm sorry. And if I'm not being very clear, again, I'm sorry. But the solution for me is when I said I had the first session with Sam to explain the idea of the map, the journey map, what I should have done was what Barry does and wrote it up took the academic time to write it up, do the demo. So I can just sit back and show the PowerPoint of what this is. And I could stop it and interject in important points for the particular group, right? So I realize and right from the beginning, I've been touting a couple of mantras. One is, I used to say in the beginning of the map, are you ready? Now I say, because it's a personal thing, is am I ready? Right? Yeah. So it's more about am I ready? Another thing is what you said about Nora, is say more, speak less. And that's what models do. They help you understand more in a concise thing. So I am looking for these things in areas where you know it's not going to be 100% fit because we're dealing with humans. So I'm not asking for Barry to say I'm 100% confident this will work. I'm interested in Barry saying, well, I think this will fail because of these 3 reasons. And I'll say, I've
got to take jigsaw puzzle pieces. I don't even know what they say.
Yeah. So no, I'm interested in having the feedback on how hard this challenge I've taken and how crazy it is. But I do have some ideas. And while I'm trying to defend myself, I'm not doing very well. While I'm trying to interject into other people's theories of mind during a show, right? Where Jazz is going to argue with everything I say. Guaranteed.
The observation is, right, you guys are entertaining yourself with your argument debate model, and everybody else.
I don't mind that. It's just when it's negative entertainment.
That's your
no. I like entertainment. I don't like negative, painful entertainment, like bullying and lying and that kind of entertainment. I like the non-bullying, non-lying entertainment.
Are a subtle example of bullying and lying. I say, because they're not intending to be bullying, they're not intending to be lying, but de facto they are.
Yeah, well, you can give them the benefit of the doubt that they don't know the error of their ways, or that you don't know enough to realize they're telling the truth.
Unbelievably annoying. I find myself outraged by them. I find myself outraged.
Well, like, I can try to overtalk you if I really have a point that I want to make, but if you steamroll on, I'll desist from trying to overtalk you.
But I don't want to be.
You'll see Doug do it. You'll see Doug do it. You'll see Doug do it. You'll see Doug do it just like that. He'll just keep saying the same thing until he gets in there.
It's not a good way to.
If you don't do that right, it's violent. And I'm getting close to being violent to you right now because you tried 3 times.
Disconnect.
Yeah, but I don't mean to be violent. And if you know I don't intend that, then you won't feel that, hopefully.
Just say, what I feel is not what you pretend. You can theorize what I feel, but your theory will probably be wrong.
Yeah, well, I have to ask you. That's the whole point. And I make that point with Jazz. Jazz tries to pinhole me, straw man me, in some of the conversations, whether it's for entertainment or not, I don't know. I think he likes his audience as well. And maybe I might like an audience too, but I just don't feel confident enough that I'm ready to hit record for the audience. I'm still getting ready.
Well, then do what the professor does. Go back and write your textbook and then go on Rachel Maddow and spell it out very coherently.
Yeah, well, we're getting there. But I think the most effective thing I can do, instead of me going and creating a whole blog world of all of these things ready to go and think that instead of over preparing something that might not be on target, for example, if I get the buy-in from the people, because I'm not doing it because I want to show that Sam, for example, in the example I gave of Sam and Doug talking about the things that they are trying to agree better on or disagree better on, or however it may be, which I think is a big focal point. You know, if you think about the fact that it's a challenge, then there's going to be misunderstanding, misspoken, misadventures, as you say, confusion. There's going to be worldviews that clash. So how, within all of that, if we deem it's important that we want to put the effort in, because the sane thing to say is, I don't got time for this, because you very well may not, right? But if we're going to go to the problem of making a conversation tool where you do get all of that messiness in the mix, and you don't know who that person is, and you won't know what their mind is, but can you give me some handlebars? Don't give me the whole trolley. Just give me a few handlebars and I'll decide, how far we can get, because that's, I think, where most people are. Most people aren't at the academic level where they can sit down and wait their turn and write the book.
At the graduate level in systems theory, there's like 0.1% of the population can even be in attendance at the graduate level that Sam and
how many people can think abstractly? Do you know that? How many people have the skill capacity to think abstractly?
There's like 6 levels of abstraction, from the concrete to the most abstract. Most people only get like 1 or 2 levels of, the ground level of concreteness and maybe 1 level of abstraction. When you get to 4, 5, and 6 levels of abstraction, you've lost 95% of the population.
So how do you turn that into a story, which is something I've heard you say before, right?
Well, that's exactly what the theologians did. The theologians were working at the highest level of abstraction.
And therefore, sir, Bebe, and therefore Bebe.
They make up stories.
Bebe is on that road.
Shakespeare makes up stories.
You see, it is so complicated and it is so messy that Bebe is willing to take the challenge of creating these characters, where someone like Peter is so analytical that they can't see the forest for the trees. And so I'm looking at the forest with Bebe, you're looking at the forest with Bebe, Peter's looking at the trees, saying these, that could just
ask Peter if he agrees with that analysis.
Well, what he said was he wanted to work on the trees that he knows need fixing, and Bebe saying, I think we have a bug infestation in the forest.
Yeah, she called it darkness. I think that was her term of art.
She has a lot of interesting things, and it's so enjoyable speaking with her, the times that I have and sharing. So there's a lot of people, and I think that the fact that she came from a very spiritual background does not.
Her father is a Lutheran minister.
It doesn't impede my interest in her one bit. And you think I'm a militant atheist. It's like, how does that go?
I called you militant atheist. I don't know, but Bibi is the daughter of a Lutheran minister. I presume you knew that.
Yes.
And she was called the hero of the Lutheran Church in Arlington or wherever it was for her practices there. And
she did a lot of fundraising and stuff as well.
Yeah, fundraising, whatever it was. So so she comes from a foundation, and this was so funny because Luther was a disciple of Calvin, John Calvin, who you mix up with John Kelvin. Just name something. And I thought that was kind of an amusing connection, because I had never looked up John Calvin, and when you I guess
that was a dictation error. That was a dictation error, by the way.
That's what I figured. Yeah. And so I go, who's he talking about? John Calvin? Calvinism? So I looked at and I go, oh, Calvin is the founder of what becomes Lutheran. And I knew Martin Luther. I knew because Martin Luther King, same name. Yeah. But I didn't really know what's in Calvinism and Lutheran theology, because first of all, I was raised Jewish. So what do I know about different?
I don't have a problem with people trying to dream whatever dream they want. It's when they bring the authority into it and the high level of claims. And I just recently, I probably learned before, but again, I was reminded that the difference between, in fact, I asked Google, hey Google, what's the difference between evangelical and fundamentalist? And I assume you know the difference, but there's
I could probably give you a half-assed answer, but I'm probably.
Well, it's just the fundamentalist believes the word of God is literal. That's basically that's the distinction, I guess. Now, maybe that's wrong, but that's what Google said. And that makes sense, because the fundamental, every word is true. The evangelical will believe everything is in God 100%, where once you start to get into the less than 100%, you're starting to get into that atheist territory, because as soon as you start to doubt, I think the real term of atheist is someone who lives their life as if there was no God. But it just means you don't believe.
What is the word God? God is a pronoun. God is a title, like president or
That's exactly the right question. That's exactly the right question. Like Joel's God's different than David Middlemis's God, which he doesn't say. He's not even spiritual. But to listen to him, you think he's talking about God.
Did you
and
see
every
Michelle
individual has
Obama's,
their own God.
Did you
Every
see
individual
Michelle
has their own.
Obama's autobiography that came out like a year or two ago?
Who's by the way?
Michelle Obama wrote an autobiography.
Oh yes, yeah, I heard about that.
Remember
I didn't
the title
read
of
it.
her autobiography?
Oh, not right offhand, but it was catchy. I can't think of it right offhand. Tell no lies.
In terms of grammar, it's a gerund, and it's a gerund that's associated with the verb to be.
Yeah, we've been there before. This being thing.
It's close it's not being. It's close to being, but it's not being.
Yeah, and the word Jehovah meaning the being, and the word I couldn't even spell. Like you've got a few common themes that keep coming back that mean a lot to you, and now I get to know you better. I can see where you're coming from.
So I can see that you forgot this, which is not too surprising. Although I'm a little bit disappointed that you forgot it because I thought it was pretty.
I forgot what about Michelle Obama?
No,
or about the being.
About the name that Michelle Obama chose for the title of her autobiography and its origin in literature.
Okay.
So the word that she used for her title was one word, becoming.
Becoming, that's it.
Which is a verb as opposed to being, which is sort of a noun, I guess. So
yeah, you're relating to this with what does it mean to God, right? What does it mean to the word God? So
it turns out, so you remember that Carl Sagan's, Sam wants to cut us off.
Yeah, I have a Zoom session at noon in about 3 minutes. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to use my channel.
Colin can throw it away when we're off.
I just got back.
Carl Sagan says the cosmos is all that is, or ever was, or ever will be. The cosmos is in the process of becoming what it is becoming. In Exodus, Moses says to the deity, "What's your name?"
Yeah.
The deity, which is something in his head, in Moses' head, says, "I am all that is, or ever was, or ever will be."
See you
Literally.
Nice chat. Talk to you later.
Come on, guys. I got to use my channel, unfortunately. Okay.
Enjoy your day, guys.
See ya.